I'm Evelyn, 68 years old, and I've always been there for my son Patrick, including sending him monthly financial support since he lost his job. When he asked me to babysit my grandson Jacob, I was thrilled. Little did I know I'd be relegated to sleeping on their lumpy living room couch, despite their house having a guest room. After 3 painful nights and discovering their expensive purchases, I made a quiet decision that would change everything. The bank's call to Patrick was just the beginning. If you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken advantage of. My life hasn't been easy, but I've always found ways to make it work. After my husband Thomas left when Patrick was only 7, I raised our son alone while working 2 jobs. I was a receptionist at a dental office during the day and waited tables at night. There were countless evenings when I'd tuck Patrick into bed, then sneak out to my night shift, asking our neighbor Gladys to listen for him. Those years were exhausting, but seeing Patrick grow into a smart, kind boy made every sacrifice worthwhile. Patrick and I were incredibly close during those early years. I never missed a baseball game or school play, even if it meant running on 3 hours of sleep. I'd pack special lunches with notes tucked inside, and every Friday was our movie night with homemade popcorn. I remember how he'd curl up next to me on our worn sofa, his head on my shoulder as we watched whatever Viz tape we'd rented that week. Those moments were precious, islands of peace in our hectic lives. When Patrick met Miranda in college, I was thrilled. She was ambitious and sharp, studying business while Patrick pursued engineering. They seemed perfect together, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. Their wedding was small but beautiful, and I cried tears of joy watching my son begin this new chapter. 3 years later, they blessed me with my grandson Jacob, now 6 years old and the light of my life. Everything changed when Patrick lost his engineering position at a manufacturing firm 3 years ago. The company downsized, and despite his talents, he was among those let go. At first, I believed it would be temporary. Patrick had always been resourceful and hardworking. But weeks turned into months, and his job search grew increasingly discouraging. I had retired by then, living on my modest pension and savings. It wasn't much, but I'd always been careful with money. When Patrick first asked for help with their mortgage payment, I didn't hesitate. "Just until I find something new, Mom," he promised. I transferred the money immediately, happy I could help during their difficult time. That first request became a pattern. Each month, Patrick needed money for various expenses: the mortgage, car payments, Jacob's preschool, medical bills. I adjusted my budget, cutting back on small pleasures like my gardening club and occasional lunches with friends. I even canceled my basic cable service. None of that mattered if it meant helping my son and his family stay afloat. What I didn't notice at first was the subtle shift in Patrick's attitude. The profuse thanks of those early months gradually faded. The money transfers became expected, acknowledged with brief texts or sometimes not at all. During family gatherings, I began noticing small instances of disrespect. Patrick would interrupt me mid-sentence or dismiss my suggestions with a wave of his hand. Miranda would exchange glances with him when I spoke, as if sharing a private joke. There were other incidents too. When I mentioned needing a new refrigerator after mine broke down, Patrick suggested I just eat out more, rather than offering to help, despite the thousands I'd given them. When I came down with pneumonia last winter, they visited once for 20 minutes, Patrick checking his watch repeatedly. Miranda didn't call to check on me once during my 2-week recovery. My home is a small 2-bedroom condo in a modest community for seniors. I keep it neat and comfortable, with furniture I've had for decades. My kitchen table still bears the marks where Patrick carved his initials as a child. I've never needed luxury, finding joy instead in my small garden patio and the bird feeder outside my kitchen window. The contrast between my careful budgeting and Patrick and Miranda's lifestyle became increasingly apparent. While I trimmed every possible expense from my budget to help them, they seemed to be living quite comfortably. Miranda always had perfect manicures and new clothes. Patrick upgraded his phone twice in the past year. Their social media showed dinners at restaurants I could never afford, even before I started supporting them. Still, I told myself they needed to maintain appearances. Patrick was job hunting after all and had to look successful. Miranda worked in real estate where image matters. I rationalized every expense I saw, every sign that perhaps my financial help wasn't as desperately needed as they claimed. Love makes us blind sometimes, especially a mother's love. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was repotting my geraniums. Patrick's name flashed on my phone screen, and I wiped my hands on my gardening apron before answering. "Mom, I need a huge favor," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone he'd used since childhood whenever he wanted something. "Miranda and I have a chance to go away for our anniversary weekend. Her boss offered us his lake house. It's perfect timing with my job interview next week. We really need this break." My heart lifted at his mention of a job interview. After 3 years of sending monthly support, the prospect of Patrick finding employment again gave me hope. "Of course, dear. When do you need me to watch Jacob?" I asked, already mentally rearranging my sparse schedule. "Thursday through Sunday. We'd drop him at your place, but Miranda thinks it would be better for him to stay in his own environment. You know how kids are with routines." I agreed immediately. The thought of spending 3 full days with my grandson filled me with joy. Jacob and I had always shared a special bond, even though I saw him less frequently than I wished. The next day, I visited our local toy store, selecting educational games and art supplies I thought Jacob would enjoy. The clerk, Betty, wrapped each item in colorful paper, as I described my grandson's interests and personality. "He sounds wonderful," Betty said, handing me the bag of presents. "You're going to have such a special time together." I also stopped at the grocery store, filling my cart with ingredients for Jacob's favorite cookies and healthy meals I could prepare during my stay. I splurged on ingredients for homemade pizza, remembering how Patrick and I used to make them together when he was Jacob's age. Thursday afternoon arrived, and I packed an overnight bag with careful consideration. Comfortable clothes, my medications, a few paperback novels, and my knitting project. I didn't pack much, assuming I'd have access to laundry if needed. The drive to Patrick's suburban home took nearly an hour through heavy traffic, but my excitement grew with each mile. Their house was in an upscale neighborhood, much nicer than anything I could have provided for Patrick during his childhood. 2 stories with beautiful landscaping and a 3-car garage. They'd purchased it when both their careers were thriving, before Patrick's job loss. Jacob burst through the front door as I pulled into the driveway, his face alight with excitement. "Grandma! Grandma! I lost another tooth!" he exclaimed, showing me the gap in his smile. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the sweet scent of his shampoo. Patrick appeared behind him, already dressed in casual but expensive travel clothes. His greeting was brief, a quick peck on my cheek before he took my bag from my hand. Miranda emerged from the kitchen, her perfectly highlighted hair framing her flawless makeup. "We're running late," she announced, barely acknowledging my arrival. "Jacob's schedule is on the refrigerator. Bedtime is 8 sharp, no exceptions. He can only have screen time after finishing all his homework." Patrick gave me a hasty tour, though I'd visited their home many times before. "We just renovated the kitchen," he mentioned, showing off gleaming granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. I noticed a wine refrigerator that certainly hadn't been there during my last visit, stocked with numerous bottles. As the tour continued, we passed what I knew to be their guest room. The door was closed, but I assumed that's where I'd be sleeping. We continued to Jacob's room, the master bedroom, and finally returned downstairs. "You'll be comfortable on the living room couch," Patrick said casually, placing my bag beside the leather sofa. "There are extra blankets in that chest. It pulls out if you want more space." I stood there momentarily confused. "What about the guest room?" I asked. Miranda answered while checking her designer watch. "Oh, we're using that for storage right now. It's completely full of boxes from the renovation." She didn't meet my eyes as she spoke. Before I could respond, Patrick announced it was time for them to leave. Hugs for Jacob, keys handed to me, and a hurried list of emergency contacts followed. Within minutes, they were backing their luxury SUV out of the driveway, waving briefly before disappearing down the street. Jacob tugged at my hand, eager to show me his new video game. As I followed him, I overheard the tail end of a conversation between Patrick and Miranda that they hadn't realized was audible through the still open front door. "Do you think she'll be okay on the couch?" Patrick asked. She'll be fine, Miranda replied dismissively. It's only for a few days, and we're not dismantling my crafting space for her. Besides, it's not like she's paying for a hotel room. Their voices faded as they drove away, but their words remained, stinging like tiny paper cuts. I pushed the hurt aside, determined not to let it interfere with my time with Jacob. He deserved my full attention and love, regardless of his parents' behavior. That evening, as Jacob chatted excitedly about school and friends, I noticed several new and expensive items throughout the house. A large flat-screen television I hadn't seen before. Designer throw pillows still with tags attached. Shopping bags from high-end stores tucked in corners. All while I continued sending a significant portion of my fixed income to help with their essential expenses. The first evening with Jacob was delightful despite my growing awareness of the situation. We made homemade pizza together, his small hands enthusiastically spreading sauce and sprinkling cheese. I taught him how to fold the perfect paper airplane, just as I'd shown Patrick decades ago. We built a fort in the living room using sheets and chair backs, then read stories by flashlight until his eyelids grew heavy. After tucking Jacob into bed, I returned to the living room to prepare my sleeping area. The leather couch was sleek and stylish, but clearly not designed for sleeping. It was short, barely accommodating my 5'5" frame, and the pull-out mechanism Patrick had mentioned was stiff with disuse. The mattress was thin, with springs that pressed uncomfortably against my back. Sleep came fitfully that night. The living room's open layout meant every house noise echoed. The refrigerator hummed, the heating system clicked, and somewhere a faucet dripped with maddening regularity. By morning, my lower back ached fiercely, a condition I'd managed carefully since a fall 2 years prior. Jacob woke early, full of 6-year-old energy. I masked my discomfort and fatigue with a bright smile, preparing his favorite breakfast of dinosaur-shaped pancakes. While he ate, I took my morning medications and discreetly massaged my sore back. "Grandma, why didn't you sleep in the guest room?" Jacob asked suddenly, syrup dripping from his chin. "Your parents said it's being used for storage right now," I explained gently. Jacob looked confused. "But Aunt Susan slept there last weekend when she visited. Mom put flowers in there and everything." I absorbed this information silently, focusing instead on wiping sticky syrup from his hands. Later, while Jacob was occupied with drawing, I found myself walking past the closed guest room door. Curiosity and a growing sense of unease prompted me to turn the knob. The room was indeed cluttered with storage boxes, but they were neatly stacked against one wall, leaving the queen-sized bed completely accessible. Fresh linens covered the mattress, and a small vase of now wilting flowers sat on the nightstand, confirming Jacob's innocent revelation. The room could have easily been cleared enough for my stay. As I closed the door, a sharp pain shot through my lower back, a reminder of my uncomfortable night. I searched the bathroom for pain relievers, opening the medicine cabinet to find expensive skincare products and prescriptions. In the kitchen, I finally located some generic acetaminophen, taking 2 tablets with water. While searching, I couldn't help noticing more evidence of spending that seemed at odds with a family in financial crisis. A drawer full of high-end makeup, a closet containing shopping bags with designer labels, receipts on the counter for recent online purchases. The second day brought new challenges. Jacob, perhaps sensing my distraction, tested boundaries more assertively. He resisted completing his homework, had a tantrum when I enforced screen time limits, and rejected the healthy lunch I prepared. By afternoon, my back pain had intensified, and exhaustion clouded my thinking. That evening, my phone rang. Patrick's name appeared on the screen. "Mom, we're having an amazing time," he said, the sound of laughter and music in the background. "The lake is beautiful, and Miranda's boss introduced us to some really important people in her industry." "That's wonderful, dear," I replied, wincing as I shifted on the uncomfortable couch. "Jacob and I are doing fine." "Great. Listen, we were thinking of extending our trip by a day. The network opportunities here are incredible. You don't mind staying through Monday, right?" Before I could respond, Patrick continued, his voice taking on a familiar tone. "Also, the restaurant here is more expensive than we expected. Any chance you could transfer an extra $500 to help cover it? I'd really appreciate it." The request hung in the air between us. In the past, I would have immediately agreed, transferring the money within minutes of ending our call. But something felt different now. Perhaps it was the physical discomfort from sleeping on the couch. Perhaps it was seeing the disconnect between their claimed financial struggles and their actual lifestyle. Or perhaps it was simply reaching a breaking point after years of one-sided giving. "I'm not sure I can stay an extra day, Patrick," I said carefully. "I have a doctor's appointment on Monday. Can't you reschedule it? This is really important for my career prospects," he pressed, irritation creeping into his voice. I agreed to check about rescheduling, though I knew I wouldn't. The appointment was fictional, a small rebellion against being taken for granted. We ended the call shortly after, with Patrick reminding me about the money transfer before hanging up. That night, as Jacob slept peacefully upstairs, I sat awake on the uncomfortable couch, reflecting on the pattern of financial requests that had defined my relationship with Patrick in recent years. Each one came with promises about repayment once his situation improved, yet that improvement never seemed to materialize. Meanwhile, evidence of their comfortable lifestyle surrounded me in this very house. The following morning, Jacob provided more innocent insights as we colored together at the kitchen table. "Daddy says we're going to Disney World this summer," he announced, carefully staying within the lines of his dinosaur picture. "But it's a secret because Grandma might not understand." "What wouldn't I understand, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Daddy says you think they don't have money for fun stuff, so we have to be careful what we tell you." He looked up with innocent eyes. "Is that why you give them money all the time?" The simple question hit me with unexpected force. From the mouths of babes, as they say. Jacob had inadvertently confirmed what I'd been reluctant to acknowledge. My son was deliberately misrepresenting his financial situation to continue receiving my support. Sunday evening arrived with no word from Patrick and Miranda about their return time. Jacob and I had spent the day baking cookies and playing board games, trying to ignore the growing discomfort in my back from 2 more nights on the unyielding couch. I had helped Jacob complete his weekend homework and prepared his backpack for school the next day, uncertain whether his parents would return in time. It was nearly 10 o'clock, 2 hours past Jacob's bedtime, when headlights finally swept across the living room wall. I had allowed him to stay up, knowing he was anxious about his parents' return. He raced to the door as the key turned in the lock. Patrick and Miranda burst in, tanned and relaxed, carrying shopping bags from exclusive boutiques. They embraced Jacob, exclaiming over how much they'd missed him while simultaneously dismissing him to bed without asking about his weekend. "You should have put him to bed at the regular time," Miranda commented, noticing the late hour. "His teacher will complain if he's tired tomorrow." I bit back a reply about their late return without notice or apology. Instead, I gestured to the kitchen, where dishes from our dinner still sat in the sink. We just finished eating. I was about to clean up. Miranda surveyed the kitchen with obvious disapproval. "The house is a mess. Didn't you follow the cleaning schedule I left on the refrigerator?" In truth, I had done my best to maintain their immaculate home while managing Jacob's needs and my increasing back pain. The mess consisted of little more than those dinner dishes and a few of Jacob's toys scattered in the living room. "I tried to keep up," I said, hearing the weariness in my voice. Jacob and I were focused on having quality time together. Patrick dropped onto the sofa, the very spot where I'd spent 3 uncomfortable nights. "Mom, did you see my text about transferring that extra money? The resort charged our card already." I didn't get a chance to go to the bank, I lied, having deliberately ignored his requests. It was the first time I'd ever denied him financial help, a small act of self-preservation. His expression darkened. "We were counting on that. The bill was much higher than expected." "Perhaps you should have checked the prices before ordering," I suggested mildly. Miranda, who had been inspecting the contents of the refrigerator, turned sharply. "We were networking for Patrick's career. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money." "Of course," I nodded, gathering my belongings. "I should get going. It's late, and I have a long drive home." "You could stay tonight and leave in the morning," Patrick offered, though his tone lacked conviction. "The couch is all made up already." Something inside me snapped at his casual reference to the couch. 3 nights of discomfort, disrespect, and growing awareness had reached a tipping point. The couch that destroyed my back? I asked quietly, while your guest room sat available just down the hall. Patrick's expression registered surprise, then defensiveness. The guest room is full of storage. We told you that. I saw inside Patrick. The bed was made up. Jacob told me Aunt Susan stayed there just last weekend. A flush crept up my son's neck. That was different. Susan was here for Miranda's work event. And what was I here for? Free childcare so you could extend your luxury weekend. My voice remained calm, though my hands trembled slightly. Mom, you're overreacting. It's just a sleeping arrangement. Is it? Or is it a symptom of something much larger? I gathered my overnight bag, moving slowly to accommodate my aching back. I'm going home now. I need to rest in my own bed. Patrick followed me to the door, his expression a mixture of confusion and annoyance. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about this. We asked you to help out, and you agreed. I agreed to babysit my grandson, whom I love dearly. I didn't agree to be treated with less consideration than you'd show a house guest. Well, you get what you pay for, he muttered, then immediately looked as if he regretted the words. I stopped cold, my hand on the doorknob. What did you say? Miranda appeared behind him, her eyes darting between us. Patrick didn't mean anything by that. I think he did, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. And I think it's quite revealing.
Mom, I'm sorry.
That came out wrong, Patrick backpedaled. Did it? Or was it the most honest thing you've said to me in years? I opened the door, the cool night air a welcome relief from the tension inside. By the way, how was the 7-course dinner at La Maison on Friday night? And the private boat tour on Saturday? Jacob mentioned overhearing your plans. Their expressions confirmed what I'd suspected. The networking excuse covered a weekend of pure indulgence, likely funded in part by my monthly support payments. We deserved a nice weekend, Miranda defended. Patrick's been under so much stress with the job search. 3 years is a long job search, I observed quietly, especially with all those networking opportunities. I stepped outside, turning back one last time. Goodbye, Patrick. Please tell Jacob I love him and we'll see him soon. The drive home was difficult. Tears blurred my vision periodically, forcing me to pull over twice to compose myself. The confrontation replayed in my mind, particularly Patrick's callous comment about getting what you pay for. Was that how he viewed our relationship now? A financial transaction rather than a bond of love and mutual support? My modest condo felt like a sanctuary when I finally arrived. I eased my aching body onto my comfortable bed, relief washing over me as the pressure eased from my inflamed back muscles. The contrast between my simple but welcoming home and the cold disregard I'd experienced at my son's house couldn't have been clearer. Years of emotional and financial manipulation crystallized in my mind during those quiet hours. I'd been sending nearly a third of my monthly income to Patrick, believing I was helping him through a temporary crisis. Meanwhile, he and Miranda maintained a lifestyle of luxury, treating me as a convenience rather than family. As dawn broke, I faced a painful decision. Continue supporting a son who showed me little respect, or reclaim my resources and self-worth. For the first time, I truly understood that my unwavering support wasn't helping Patrick grow as a person. It was enabling behavior that diminished us both. The morning after returning home, I sat at my small kitchen table with a cup of tea, looking out at the bird feeder where a cardinal and his mate were sharing seeds. Their simple cooperation struck me as beautiful and natural, a stark contrast to the imbalanced relationship I developed with my son. My living room was modest compared to Patrick and Miranda's spacious home. My furniture was well-worn but comfortable, each piece holding memories of family gatherings and quiet evenings. The television was small, several generations behind the enormous smart TV I'd noticed in their media room. My kitchen lacked granite countertops or wine refrigerators. Yet in this simple space, I had created a home filled with warmth and dignity. Opening my file cabinet, I retrieved the folder labeled Patrick and spread its contents across the table. Bank statements showed the monthly transfers to his account stretching back 3 years. Each one represented sacrifices on my part. Canceling my dental insurance 1 month, forgoing new glasses another, eating simpler meals and giving up small pleasures. Next to these financial records were birthday cards and notes from earlier years, filled with expressions of love and appreciation that had gradually disappeared from our relationship. Reading them now highlighted the change in Patrick's attitude, since he began expecting my financial support. The ringing phone interrupted my thoughts. It was Louise, my closest friend since our teaching days 30 years ago. "Evelyn, I've been trying to reach you all weekend. How was babysitting with Jacob?" she asked. I found myself pouring out the entire story, from the uncomfortable couch to the confrontation upon their return. Louise listened without interruption, making occasional sounds of dismay. "I always thought Patrick was taking advantage," she said when I finished. "Remember when he wouldn't drive you to your cataract surgery? Yet you were sending him money that same week." "I didn't want to see it," I admitted. "He's my son. I wanted to believe I was helping him through a tough time. And now," Louise prompted gently, "now I need to decide whether to continue the monthly transfers. What does your heart tell you?" I considered this question carefully. "That I love my son, but this isn't healthy for either of us. He's become entitled, and I've become a resource rather than a mother." After our conversation, I turned to my computer, researching articles about financial boundaries with adult children. The stories I read resonated deeply, many written by parents who described situations strikingly similar to mine. Financial assistance intended as temporary becoming permanent. Adult children growing increasingly entitled. Relationships damaged by money rather than strengthened. One article particularly struck me. Supporting your adult children financially isn't always helping them. Sometimes it prevents them from developing the resilience and problem-solving skills they need to thrive independently. With growing conviction, I logged into my online banking account and navigated to the automatic transfer section. My finger hovered over the mouse button as I contemplated canceling the monthly payment to Patrick's account. This single action would retain nearly a third of my income, money I genuinely needed for my own expenses and security. It would also fundamentally change my relationship with my son. Would he still want a connection with me if I wasn't providing financial support? The question itself revealed how unhealthy our dynamic had become. I clicked the button, canceling the recurring transfer. A confirmation message appeared on screen, asking if I was sure. I confirmed, feeling a complex mixture of anxiety and relief wash over me. Next, I took out my stationery and began writing a letter to Patrick. I explained my decision calmly and with love, detailing how the babysitting experience had opened my eyes to realities I'd been avoiding. I acknowledged my role in creating our unhealthy pattern and expressed hope that we could build a more balanced relationship moving forward. After completing the letter, I sealed it in an envelope but didn't address it. Something told me to wait, to see how events unfolded before sending such a definitive communication. The days that followed brought unexpected emotional challenges. I cycled through guilt, wondering if I was being selfish or vindictive. Then came grief for the simpler relationship we once shared. Before money complicated everything. Anger surfaced too, at both Patrick for taking advantage and myself for allowing it. Gradually, these turbulent emotions gave way to a sense of empowerment. I began reclaiming small pleasures I'd sacrificed to support Patrick. I rejoined my gardening club, purchased the bird identification book I'd been wanting, and scheduled the dental cleaning I'd postponed. Each small act of self-care reinforced that my needs mattered too. A week passed with no contact from Patrick. I thought about calling him several times but decided against it. This space seemed necessary, allowing both of us to adjust to the new reality. I wondered how he would react when the first of the month arrived and no money appeared in his account. Would he be angry? Confused? Would he reach out immediately or wait for an explanation? I prepared myself for various scenarios, rehearsing calm responses to potential accusations. As the date approached, I felt a surprising lightness. The decision had been made, the boundary established. Whatever came next, I would face it with the quiet dignity that had carried me through raising a child alone and building a life on my own terms. The money that would have gone to Patrick remained in my account when the first of the month passed. I used a portion to repair my leaking bathroom faucet, a maintenance issue I'd been postponing for months. The simple act of addressing my own home's needs felt symbolically important. 2 weeks passed without word from Patrick. I began to wonder if perhaps he hadn't noticed the missing transfer, though that seemed unlikely given their apparent reliance on my contribution. More likely, he was processing the change in his own way, perhaps discussing with Miranda how to approach me. The anticipated call finally came on a Wednesday afternoon, 18 days after I'd canceled the automatic transfer. When Patrick's name appeared on my phone screen, I took a deep breath before answering. "Mom, did you know your bank transfer didn't go through this month?" Patrick's voice held forced casualness, as if he were mentioning something of minor importance rather than the financial support he'd come to depend on. "It wasn't an error, Patrick," I replied calmly, my heart pounding despite my composed exterior. "I decided to discontinue the monthly payments." A beat of silence followed then. "You what? Why would you do that without talking to me first? I tried to talk with you after the babysitting weekend, but you weren't receptive." "This is about the sleeping arrangements?" His voice rose incredulously. "You're punishing us financially because you had to sleep on the couch for a few nights?" I sank into my reading chair, preparing for the difficult conversation ahead. "No, Patrick. The couch was simply what opened my eyes to a pattern that's been developing for years. I've been supporting you financially for 3 years now, with no end in sight. Meanwhile, you and Miranda maintain a lifestyle that suggests you don't actually need my help." "We absolutely need your help," he protested. "The job market is terrible. I've been trying everything." "I believe you've been looking," I acknowledged. "But I also believe your financial situation isn't as dire as you've led me to believe. The wine refrigerator, the shopping bags, the expensive restaurant bills, the planned Disney vacation you're keeping secret from me." Another silence, this one longer and heavier. "Jacob shouldn't have mentioned that," he finally said, his voice tight. "Jacob is 6, Patrick. He doesn't understand the complex dynamics between us. He simply repeated what he's heard at home." "So you're just cutting us off? After everything we've been through?" The accusation in his tone was unmistakable. "I'm establishing a boundary that should have been in place long ago. My financial support was meant to be temporary, not a permanent arrangement." I heard muffled voices, then Miranda came on the line, her words sharp and clipped. "Evelyn, this is completely unacceptable. We have bills due this week that we counted on your contribution for." "I understand this is difficult," I replied. "But you've had my financial support for 3 years. That's given you ample time to adjust your spending or find alternative income sources. Are you suggesting I get a second job while raising your grandson?" Miranda's voice dripped with indignation. "Many parents work multiple jobs to support their families," I pointed out gently. "I certainly did when raising Patrick. This is different. The economy is different. Perhaps. But your lifestyle choices are still within your control. The renovated kitchen, the designer clothes, the luxury vacations presented as networking opportunities are all choices you've made, while accepting my financial help." Patrick returned to the phone. "If this is about how we treated you during the babysitting weekend, we apologize. You can have the guest room next time. We'll clear it out." The offer, clearly intended to restore the flow of money, rather than address the real issues, saddened me. "This isn't about the guest room, Patrick. It's about respect, honesty, and the kind of relationship we want to have moving forward." "What about your relationship with Jacob?" Miranda called from the background. "If you cut us off financially, you might not see much of him." The thinly veiled threat struck like a physical blow. Using my beloved grandson as leverage revealed just how manipulative our relationship had become. "Are you suggesting you'd restrict my access to Jacob if I don't give you money?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Patrick quickly intervened. "Of course not. Miranda is just upset. We would never keep Jacob from you." The backpedaling was swift but unconvincing. The threat, once spoken, couldn't be easily dismissed. "I love Jacob with all my heart," I said firmly, "and I hope to continue being part of his life. But I won't be emotionally blackmailed into financial support I can no longer provide." The conversation continued in circles, Patrick alternating between anger, appeals to family loyalty, and attempts to make me feel guilty. I remained calm, repeating my decision without hostility but with unwavering conviction. Eventually, the anger in Patrick's voice gave way to something else. Uncertainty. Perhaps for the first time he realized I wasn't going to change my mind. The financial support he'd come to take for granted was truly ending. "What are we supposed to do now?" he asked, sounding momentarily like the young boy who would come to me with problems, expecting me to fix everything. "You'll figure it out," I said, with genuine confidence in his abilities. "You're resourceful and intelligent. You always have been." After we hung up, I received a series of text messages from Patrick, tracking his emotional journey from fury to contemplation. "I can't believe you're doing this to your own family." Then an hour later, "We've always counted on you. This isn't fair." By evening, "Maybe we have been taking you for granted, but cutting us off completely seems extreme." And finally, near midnight, "I need time to think about everything. Please don't contact Jacob's school or mention any of this to him." I respected his request for space, though the suggestion that I might upset Jacob troubled me. I had never and would never burden my grandson with adult concerns. 3 days later, I received an unexpected visit. My doorbell rang on Saturday morning, and I opened it to find Jacob standing there with an elderly woman I recognized as Miranda's mother, Barbara.
Surprise, Grandma.
Jacob exclaimed, throwing his arms around my waist. "Dad said I could spend the day with you." Barbara offered a knowing smile. Patrick asked if I could drive Jacob over. He thought you two might enjoy some time together. I invited them both in, but Barbara declined. "I have errands to run. I'll pick him up at 4 if that works for you." After she left, Jacob and I spent a wonderful day together. We baked cookies, played board games, and took a walk to the neighborhood park. He chattered happily about school and friends, showing no awareness of the tension between the adults in his life. When Barbara returned to collect him, she lingered in the doorway. "Patrick's a good boy at heart," she said quietly. "He just lost his way a bit. Miranda too. They both grew up with parents who gave them everything. Unlike us," I smiled, recognizing a fellow member of the generation that had learned early about working hard and making do. "Exactly," she nodded. "Sometimes our children need to remember where they came from. What do they call it nowadays? A reset." As Jacob hugged me goodbye, he whispered, "Dad said we should be nicer to you. He said you're the strongest person he knows." Those simple words, delivered innocently, suggested that perhaps Patrick was beginning to see our situation from a different perspective. It was a small spark of hope that our relationship might evolve into something healthier. 1 month after I stopped the financial support, Patrick appeared at my door unannounced. He stood on my welcome mat looking uncomfortable, hands thrust deep in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. The confident, sometimes arrogant demeanor I'd grown accustomed to was nowhere in evidence. "Can I come in, Mom?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. I welcomed him inside, offering coffee which he accepted gratefully. We sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd made the decision to end the monthly payments. For several minutes, an awkward silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall and the occasional chirp from birds at the feeder outside. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Patrick finally began, staring into his coffee cup rather than meeting my eyes. "About us. About how things have been these past few years." I waited, giving him space to continue at his own pace. "I was angry when the money stopped coming," he admitted. "Really angry. I felt betrayed, like you'd pulled the rug out from under us without warning." "I understand that," I acknowledged. But then I started looking at our bank statements, at our spending habits. Miranda and I had a lot of long conversations, some of them pretty heated. He finally looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "The truth is, we haven't been honest with you. Or with ourselves." My heart quickened at this unexpected turn. "What do you mean?" "I've had job offers over the past 3 years. Several of them. But none that paid what I thought I deserved or offered the title I wanted. So I kept turning them down, telling myself and you that nothing was available." His voice cracked slightly. "Meanwhile, your money kept coming in, making it easier to wait for the perfect opportunity." The confession stunned me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Deep down I'd suspected something like this, but hearing Patrick acknowledge it brought both pain and a strange relief. "And the spending," he continued. Miranda and I told ourselves we deserved nice things to compensate for my career setback. That keeping up appearances was necessary for networking. But really, we just got comfortable living beyond our means, knowing you were covering the essentials. Why are you telling me this now, Patrick? Because I owe you the truth. And an apology. He reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. I'm truly sorry, Mom, for taking advantage of your generosity, for treating you with disrespect when you came to babysit, for all of it. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a performance aimed at restoring the financial support. This was genuine recognition of how he'd behaved. When did you realize all this? I asked gently. It started with what Jacob said about you being the strongest person I know. That actually was something I told him, and hearing it repeated back made me reflect on why I would say that. Patrick smiled ruefully. Then Miranda's mother got involved. She gave us both a pretty stern talking to after dropping Jacob off with you that day. Barbara always did have a no-nonsense approach, I chuckled. She made us see how entitled we'd become, and how unfairly we'd treated you. Patrick squeezed my hand. The final wake-up call was when our credit card was declined at the grocery store last week. We had to really look at our finances for the first time in years. That must have been difficult, I said, remembering my own financial struggles as a young parent. It was humiliating, Patrick admitted, but necessary. I've accepted a job offer I previously dismissed as beneath me. It's in my field but at a lower level than my last position. The pay is decent, though not what I was making before. That's wonderful news, I said sincerely. When do you start? Next Monday. And Miranda has taken on additional clients with her real estate work. We've also listed some of our luxury items for sale online. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. Turns out we don't actually need a wine refrigerator. We talked for nearly 2 hours, delving into the patterns that had developed in our relationship and how we both contributed to them. I acknowledged my role in enabling his financial dependence, while he recognized how he'd come to view me as a resource rather than a person with needs and feelings of my own. About the guest room, he said as our conversation drew to a close. We've completely cleared it out. Fresh paint, new curtains, a comfortable chair by the window. It's ready whenever you want to visit or babysit again. That means a lot to me, I said, touched by this tangible sign of change. It's the least we could do. Jacob misses you. We all do. As Patrick prepared to leave, he hugged me tightly, reminiscent of the embraces we'd shared when he was younger. I want you to know that I don't expect you to resume the financial support, he said. That chapter is closed. We're going to stand on our own feet now. I'm proud of you, I told him, meaning it completely. The weeks and months that followed brought gradual healing to our relationship. Patrick started his new job and approached it with humility and determination I hadn't seen in him for years. Miranda and I developed a warmer relationship, bonding over garden planning when they decided to replace some of their ornamental landscaping with a vegetable garden to save on grocery bills. When I visited their home 2 months later, the promised guest room awaited me, comfortable and welcoming. More importantly, the atmosphere had changed. There was gratitude for simple pleasures, conversations that didn't revolve around money or possessions, and genuine interest in my life and well-being. The financial independence Patrick and Miranda were developing seemed to foster greater respect between us all. Without the monthly transfers coloring our interactions, we found our way back to a relationship based on love, rather than obligation or expectation. Setting that boundary had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Harder than working 2 jobs as a single mother. Harder than rebuilding my life after divorce. But it had ultimately been an act of love, not just self-preservation. By refusing to continue enabling Patrick's financial dependence, I'd given him the opportunity to reclaim his self-respect and resourcefulness. 6 months after our confrontation, we celebrated Jacob's 7th birthday together. As I watched Patrick interact with his son, I noticed subtle changes in his parenting. He was teaching Jacob about saving money, about the difference between wants and needs. He was passing on values of responsibility and gratitude that had somehow gotten lost in his own journey. That evening, as we shared birthday cake on their patio, Patrick raised his glass in a toast. To my mother, he said, his voice steady with emotion, who loved me enough to teach me a difficult but necessary lesson. Thank you for believing I could do better, even when I didn't believe it myself. The path to healing wasn't always smooth. There were occasional tensions when old patterns threatened to resurface. But the foundation had shifted, creating space for a healthier relationship to grow. Through this experience, I learned that true love sometimes requires difficult choices. That enabling isn't the same as helping. That respect must flow in both directions for a relationship to thrive. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to establish boundaries, even with those we love most dearly. As for Patrick, he discovered that capability and resilience he'd always possessed but had forgotten during years of dependency. He found pride in providing for his family through his own efforts, and he gained a deeper appreciation for the sacrifices I'd made throughout his life. Our story continues to evolve, as all family relationships do, but it now rests on a foundation of mutual respect and honest communication that was missing before. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for those we care about is to step back and allow them to find their own strength. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more reflections on family relationships and the courage it takes to navigate them with love and integrity. Remember to share this with someone who might need encouragement in setting their own boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you wisdom and strength in your own relationships.